Hello, hello, and welcome to the Elevated Frequency podcast and live show. I am Shannon Morse, and I'm sitting here with the lovely Lisa Kirby. And happy Thursday, February 23rd.
Happy almost March. And what is going on?
Yeah, and before you know it, it's March, and here we are. So this is our episode 13, and I have a very special relationship with the number 13. I really love the number 13. If you are also a 13 lover, it probably means that you have a relationship with change and regeneration. And this is what we're going to start to discuss today, because we have noticed both in our own personal lives, in the lives of our clients, and in the lives of just our greater community and network, that there are a lot of pretty big pivotal changes that are occurring in people's lives right now, and changes that are spanning from big career changes, big moves in location, relationship changes, all of these things. And how do we navigate those? And how can we actually support ourselves through the changes without reacting, but responding instead? Yeah.
Yes. No small feat.
No small feat. So, Lisa, have you noticed any of these changes or the desire to change something come up in you recently?
Yes, absolutely. I think kind of collectively, some of the themes that have been coming up. Well, we'll just speak honestly here that we're in the midst of a massive collective transition and absolute change on every scale, from infrastructure and institutions and just societal norms and values. It would be remiss to not speak into that immediately, because we can all feel it. And it's not to say that every generation goes through something big. There's always things that big things that are happening on a grander scale, but really and truly, for what is going on right now, we're in the midst. Like, we're going to look back at this and be like, wow, we made it through that storm. Okay. So kind of keeping that in mind, I've been feeling some of the themes come up, and it's fun when you're a coach and you're in a position to see what's coming up for multiple people in our community. We have over 80 members, so we get to see this, like, okay, there really is a collective pulse of like things that are coming up.
Yes.
What I've been noticing lately is themes around just restructuring, analyzing, reassessing, everything from personal life to professional life to how we structure our days. What kind of like lifestyle do we want to live, like on the minute level? Kind of almost stepping away from some of the bigger stuff and looking at, well, am I really enjoying my kind of day-to-day experience? And what can I move around to make it more enjoyable and fulfilling? So for me personally, I've been really feeling a strong draw to kind of restructure my day-to-day flow, and looking at, do I like where I live? That comes up a lot. I have a lot of Sagittarius energy that I did not know. So apparently I need variety, but yeah, just really looking at, where am I just kind of stuck in the hamster wheel and going through the motions? Do these things bring me joy anymore? And just really looking at maximizing enjoyment of life, I guess you would say, on all levels.
Absolutely. And one of the cool things about this is I was having dinner with one of my girlfriends last night, and she was sharing this same thing that you're sharing about reevaluating. And the way that she was sharing it at the moment, she really felt like she was on an island and she was the only one experiencing this. So I think this is one of the reasons why we like to bring up kind of the collective topics that we see inside of, and we actually have like about 80 members, but there's 109 people who are in our community with our team and everything. So we really do get to see these very interesting trends that are happening in a way that are a lot more intimate than I would say that the average workplace environment might have the opportunity to see.
Yes.
because we are watching the day-to-day behavior patterns of individuals and what's coming up for them, it becomes so much more obvious to see when there's a shift with the collective. And so it really is this kind of crazy experience. And I think sometimes it hits us, if it is a collective experience, it's hitting us at different periods.
Mm-hmm.
Like Lisa and I talk about this every once in a while. We feel like she'll go through some sort of life shift and then it'll hit me, or I'll go through it and then it'll hit her. And we're just like going at these different weaving layers of these human experiences and these conscious projections of what our reality is. And in terms of looking at the day-to-day structure, I think we can kind of look at this conversation as how to support people with a way in which to navigate when you feel a shift happening.
Yeah.
Right. And Lisa, you and I are very adaptable when it comes to changing with environment and overcoming adversity. And I feel that for those people who are being faced with a change, we can kind of go into like a little bit of a thought process structure of what do you do when you feel like there's a change that you want to make? Like how do you go through that process of, is this the right thing for me? Is this a reactionary state that I'm in? Is this something where I actually deeply feel like this is going to serve me long term? Does it impact other people in my life, which then impacts me? Like how does this conversation go? So, Lise, do you have any sort of strategy or toolbox that you use when you're thinking about a change that's coming your way?
Yes, absolutely. And I think I have learned so much through human design and understanding the best way for me personally to make decisions is not in a heightened emotional state. That's like number one. And I would say that's true for anyone. You really don't want to make these, like, especially big decisions like a move or a job change and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to make that piggying back off of, let's say you have a fight with your boss and you're like, that's it, I'm out. It's like, okay, sit with that experience. If it's been happening over and over and you
Mm-hmm.
truly don't enjoy the environment anymore and you want something different, that's a different story. But when we make decisions about change in the heat of the moment, when our emotions are kind of ruling us, then we're not really making a decision from a more steady kind of baseline place.
Mm-hmm.
So first and foremost for me nowadays, after a lot of inner work, just kind of sitting through some of those highs and lows, and even the highs, I think that's the important thing to consider as well. When the sun's shining and you're feeling good and you're like exercising and you're eating well and you're like this, high as a kite, it's also may not necessarily be a great time to make a big life-changing decision because you're in a really good emotional place. So I like to come back to neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I find that writing helps tremendously to just kind of get everything out of my brain and without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So going there, thinking the worst thoughts, thinking the best thoughts, and just letting all of that flow out and flush out. One of the other strategies that has really helped me, because I know a lot of us have that tendency to think, oh, the grass is greener if I did this. And what I find is going less specific to the things that I want and just staying a little bit more general. So the vibration feels good and positive. Sometimes when I get too specific of like, I want 20 acres on, in like spacious like trees and green all around and farm animals and this and that. And it's like, oh, that sounds lovely. But I can also have that experience in the moment without necessarily having this very specific thing that I created in my mind. Like I can experience sunshine and nature and trees and outside time. So for me, it's like it's finding that balance and using tools and strategies like journaling, like coming to a neutral place, and really just checking in with myself to see what it is that I really want without necessarily. I think one of the things with change is like when you're too attached to the outcome or the thing that you think you want to change to, the tendency is to miss out on the joy and the gratitude and the experience in your current life.
Mm-hmm.
And the real challenge is like, okay, how do you reach for more, but also enjoy what you have?
Yeah. Enjoy the journey to get there.
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's the other part. Well, first of all, I love the writing aspect. I totally double down on that. Being able to get thoughts out in whatever they sound like just allows us to be more of a, like the witness to what the experience is instead of having the experience just running us in the background without being aware of it. So I'm a big proponent of that. There's something that we do with like some of our workshops that we've done for manifestation is tuning into what you want it to feel like first. If you do want to change, like, what does it feel like? Because it's never going to look like what we think it's going to look like. Like,
Right.
that's just not, I don't know. I don't know if anyone out there has gone through, be like, I want this. And it looks exactly like what they thought it was going to look like. It's like that. It just doesn't, it's not the thing that happens. It's so I always think about what we want it to feel like. But then also, I think what you're talking about is really, really important of making changes in that place of neutrality. However, sometimes when we have to make a big change because there is essentially a breakdown of a structure in some way, and we're making that change because there is no other option but to change, then I think that that's a different kind of experience, obviously. And a lot of us went through that in the beginning of 2020. And so that kind of change is because there is an external force that is causing pressure. And then we have to evolve based on the pressure. But now it actually feels like there's almost a different type of pressure. And it almost feels like the pressure is internal.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm hearing a lot from people is it's almost on the other side of that pendulum. We've had all of these different areas of stimulus and influence through the course of the pandemic and the course of feeling what it feels like to not have to go into an office for a year.
Right.
Feeling what it feels like to be on Zoom calls all day. Feeling what it feels like to have the time to pick up a hobby or learn something that you would never have had time to do before, and then starting to reacclimate into this, normal life, whatever that is, and starting to kind of go, well, wait, I really liked certain things that were happening during the pandemic. For some of us, it was very hard. Some of us, there was really beautiful aspects to it. And then I really liked some of the aspects. I didn't like some of these other aspects. But then now what's the happy medium? And now I know what both of them feel like. So then as we're going into that, I feel like from a collective perspective, a lot of people are experiencing this. And then some people are now going back to offices going like, okay, well, all of these different frills that this office is providing for me, like a walking desk and like electrolytes in my water and, all of these things to make it more sexy to come back to an office. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, people are going, but that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And it feels like this, perhaps like the pressure of the change is perhaps maybe even a bigger sensitivity to people understanding, oh, wait, dude, I had a year, but I didn't have to do that. And it was amazing. And so now what do I do? Because now I'm going to be choosing to do something that isn't necessarily in alignment with what I know is enjoyable for me. And then you start going into I start going into the aspect of, we only have this one experience that we're aware of.
Yeah.
Moment.
Yes.
Ever extending infinite moment. And then, so what do we want to be experiencing? Do we want to be at the standing desk? Do we want to be outside? Like, is it more important for us to make money, or is it more important for us to be in nature and explore and live in a community? Like, I think that there's a lot of these questions going on.
Yes. And my like radical brain always goes to, well, why do we have to follow this, conditioned path that we all have bought into, the belief of you go to school, you get a job, you work there. And for our kind of millennial generation, we're kind of at the older spectrum of the millennial generation, but our generation is kind of like already ruffled the feathers of like, well, we're not going to stay at these jobs for 20, 30 years like our parents did or grandparents did. So that's already kind of shifted where people are wanting more, I think, wanting a better kind of quality of life beyond just drudging away at work every day. I also feel that with the technology increase, at least in my experience in the corporate world, I had the interesting perspective of spanning, corporate world before iPhones, corporate world after iPhones, and just increased technology all over. And what's happening, or what did happen in my experience at least, was people started working even more. And it's like we're working more hours now than we ever did back in the day, when it was like, at least then you could check out, you could clock out. It was like, okay, your work day's done. And now it's like people are working around the clock. You're always on call. You're always getting notified and pinged. And I think for, during the pandemic, when people were able to work at home, at least you had the autonomy to kind of to organize your day and structure your day a little bit more. That was more fulfilling for your physical body and your mental health. And it's like walking on a treadmill desk in an office is not the same as going on a walk in your neighborhood and maybe walking your dog and getting an oxytocin bump from petting the dog. So I feel that shift, and, we're seeing evidence of that. And I think it's incredible. I think it's incredibly healthy for people to take a moment and just pause and reassess, what it is that they really want. There's always a job. There's always something else out there. So if that's my poke, like, if it's not everything you want, ask for something different or move on.
Totally. There's whatever you can dream up of as a job exists somewhere. And if it doesn't, you can create it.
Yes.
100%, which is pretty much what Lisa and I have done.
Yes.
Which is very interesting because we're continuing to evolve inside of that. But the one thing also that I wanted to kind of add as a little bit of maybe value for people who are coming into this position of wanting to make a change, but also feeling like they're experiencing different levels of either fatigue or burnout or any of these areas. And this is coming on the back of me getting COVID for the first time. I was like, man, I thought I was immune. Not. Anyways, but one thing, and I'll circle this back around. One thing that I realized is that, during COVID, I had my mom's like famous green soup, which made me get better very quickly when I was younger because I did not like the taste of it. So it's an extremely alkaline based soup of just boiled vegetables. So I basically had that in spring water for the majority of the time. I was sick for maybe 5 days. And what I noticed, and this is swinging it back around to if you are feeling fatigue or these things or overwhelm or burnout, when I started introducing regular food back into my body, it was a lot more sensitive to what felt good or gave me inflammation. So using this as an analogy for sometimes it's necessary to give yourself space in order to reflect on what actually is fulfilling you or nourishing you in some way and what's draining you. And that space, some of us won't have the option to really give ourselves that space, but I invite you to look at whether or not you can actually create that option for yourself and insert that option. My girlfriend last night was saying that she's going to transition jobs and she has the option of having a 2-week break in between her 2 jobs. She was like, but I'm thinking about asking for a month. And I was like, do that. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, do that. Because I can only imagine if you gave yourself a month to reflect on what you really wanted and gave yourself the opportunity to do that. And over the course of a month, like you're going to have high energy days, you're going to have low energy days, you're going to have days that you are with friends and days when you're alone, and you're going to be able to engage in all of these different, day-to-day experiences and the ebbs and flows that life has in general, and then be able to feel into more appropriately, oh, that's what I want to be doing. And somehow we've gotten into the job transition. So this is just one example. But something that I like to share with people is when they think about changing jobs, I was like, okay, that's great. But actually, what goes into that job realistically? Because some jobs can feel very glamorous.
Mhm.
And then you actually look at, well, let's actually look down to what that job entails and what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. Like, what would you physically be doing? And then people are like, oh, okay, never mind.
Yes.
Yeah. So feeling into it.
Well, and it's so relevant right now with everything going on. They even before all these layoffs that were coming, it was like the greatest shift in people changing industries ever that we've ever seen. Because I think, pretty much since 2020, we had that great reset, that great pause. And for so many of us, we were reflecting on, wow, like, what do I actually want to call into my life, and like, what am I actually enjoying? And it's almost like the collective feeling is like, we're not going to put up with anything less than a really fantastic life and what we really want. And to that, anyone can call it selfish. I think it's great because we're going to have happier, more fulfilled people that are moving more towards a better quality of life. And I think, if you're feeling stuck in, decision-making fatigue, or feeling like, you can't leave a situation, sometimes it just takes a little creativity and thinking outside the box of how to structure a lifestyle, especially when you're thinking about finances and money. There's so many different ways to do life. And again, we've just really been conditioned to kind of follow this one path. So I think that's what's fun, is let yourself get creative, take that pause when you can, even using your weekends for now, and just seeing what comes up for you and what values are most important. I like to call those my non-negotiables.
Absolutely. And inside of that as well, and I keep reverting back to this one example of my girlfriend, because she was experiencing fatigue, kind of like a little bit of like an edge of depression kind of thing going on. And so I kind of went through the questions of like, are you getting sunlight? How's your water intake? What about your food? Are you, balancing and getting the foods that you need? Because she's been through our program. And she was like, yeah, I need to do all those things again. And so sometimes it's like just making sure that your baseline, part of the non-negotiables in any sort of life and or work environment. I mean, most of us are going to be coming from a work perspective, but just understanding that if we are experiencing all of those things, it's very possible with burnout fatigue that a lot of it can be supported through the way in which we're treating our body on a daily basis, and the amount of performance and just overall well-being that we can garner from having the basics taken care of: regular sleep schedules, regular sunlight, regular movement, eating in a balanced way, not in excess or in deficit, and getting vitamin D. If you can't get it from the sun, get it from another source, because that's going to be something very, very important just for overall mood, but also for our immune system. So that was something that we were kind of discussing and talking about as well, that if you're making that decision, or if you're thinking about making a decision about a change that you have coming at you from a place where you are depleted, as in circling back to what you were saying, Lisa, not in a neutral space, it's going to be a lot harder to really feel confident that that was the right decision for you in that moment. So it's just kind of full circle in that way. And I say this not to say that I have everything figured out, because I do not. And I just get to learn from my own mistakes, or they're not even mistakes. Like there's a gift in everything that feels like it's not going right. So I get to learn from those and really reflect on like what happens when it feels like change is coming through, because right now I feel like it feels like the change is coming from inside, not necessarily outside. That's my own feeling about it at the moment. It feels like it's an inner change for most of us, not necessarily from an external pressure. For some of us, it will be, but it feels like it's an inner desire.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the like making sure that the foundations of self-care are being taken care of, because how, like, all too often, how many times have we found ourselves when those things slip a little bit, and then we're like, it's the downward spiral of, well, I feel like crap, and I'm so stressed out, and I don't like where I live, and I hate my boss. And then it becomes this, repetitive thought pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you start with self-care and you keep that foundation, I think what's so cool about our program is we teach people to stay as much as possible in that kind of foundational self-care place, so that's one variable that stays as constant as possible. Mm-hmm. So that when you experience all these things in your life, and everyone's going to have highs and lows, that you have that foundation there. It's like, it feels like a security blanket or a teddy bear, or, it's like, it's so nourishing to come back to that practice always. And it really, I think it helps, I know, for you and I, and for all of our members, kind of to weather those storms, because we always come back to that foundational self-care practice with eating real food and, getting the sleep and hydration, all the things that we need.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And sometimes we need the contrast of what it feels like to not feel good to understand how valuable those things are.
Oh, yes.
But we can only really truly appreciate that contrast if we go through the ebbs and flows.
Yes.
And I feel like that happens in all areas of health. At least I've experienced myself in all areas of ebbs and flows, whether it's training, nutrition, spiritual practice, like meditation practice, movement practice, whatever it might be, that there's always going to be these ebbs and flows. But each time it kind of gives us this barometer to go, I liked how that felt. This is what was happening in my body. This is how my life was revealing itself based on these things that I was consuming during that period, and how I was treating myself. And then when I'm either in an ebb or a flow of that phase, this is how it changes. And then being able to reflect on how that feels, and then kind of just curating little bits at a time to see what really works best for you over the course of your life.
Yes.
But if we don't have those basic tools, then it's going to be so much more difficult, like you're saying, to weather all of those storms. So we just keep circling back to the same conversation.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. So I think we might keep this one fairly short and sweet.
Yes.
So yeah, I think for everyone who might be listening to this one, if you are feeling this impetus of change that feels like it's brewing, we want you to know that it's not just you.
No.
You are not alone. Lisa and I go through some of these things very frequently, but sometimes we'll either be like, dude, are we still doing this? Like, is this still, are we still gonna, and it just happens. But if we were in a reactionary state, it might be a very different story for us. So if you are going through that, you're definitely not alone. I hope that you're taking care of your body. Hope you're taking care of your heart and your soul. And yeah, and everyone's on the same ride with you.
Yes. We'll check back in and see, get the vibe check in a few months and see how everyone's feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. I have a feeling that we're going to see some pretty big changes happening over the next few months.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much for whoever decided to join today. If you don't know us and this is your first time that you've dropped in, we are the Green Door Life. We are a health and wellness coaching an education company, everything from nutrition, movement, mindset, and so much more. So we hope everyone has a fabulous day, and we will talk to you next time.
Bye.